Hi there, and thanks for having me at the Global Game Changers Summit. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. I am Albrecht Wolfmeyer, head of the ProNite Incubator, and I'm with ProVeg International. I would like to tell you a little bit today about the future of food, about our organization, and in particular about the alternative protein part, which is such an important area when we talk about the future of food. Let me share my screen to get started. Here we go. So a few words on ProVeg first. ProVeg International is a food awareness organization, and we are focusing on the transformation of the global food system. We want to replace animal-based products with plant-based and cultured alternatives. We are currently seeing such a transformation, and this is really what all our work is about. We work with decision makers, we work with companies, with startups, investors, retailers, the public in general, consumers, and we have permanent observer status with UNFCCC. We have received the United Nations Momentum for Change Award. So we're really, really active in all this space where it comes to campaigns, political work, but also what we call corporate engagement. ProVeg has bases on 4 continents. You'll find us in the US, in South Africa, in China, and in several European locations. Our headquarters is in Berlin, and that's the location of the ProVeg Incubator as well. We have around a staff of around 200 people, and we are driving our internationalization, talking to other organizations all over the world, and to start and bring new members on board, for example, in Latin America and Asia in particular, currently. So, why food awareness in the first place? In our perspective, many of the world's most urgent problems share a common cause, and this is the food choices. Food choices we make every day as consumers, but food choices also in terms of dietary guidelines, all these things that decide what people eat. And if we look at this problem from a multi-perspective, you see that there are several areas where food plays a crucial role, actually. And that is why ProVeg considers themselves as a multi-problem solver. Look at the climate or pro-environment aspect. Animal agriculture vastly contributes to climate change, to deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and environmental pollution, among other things. Depending on the sources like FAO or other organizations, animal agriculture is actually responsible for around 20% of the greenhouse gases on this planet and about 80% of rainforest destruction. Think of animal welfare as another area. Factory farming alone causes around 80 billion land animals to be slaughtered per year. And these are just land animals, not counting trillion of fish and other seafood. 75% of soy harvest is fed to animals. So think about justice, the distribution of food, which is actually in most cases used for feed. And think of health. 75% of antibiotics in the EU and the US are used for animal agriculture, and antimicrobial resistance is becoming a growing public health problem all over the world. So ProVeg addresses these 5 areas, which we call the 5 pros: pro-animals, pro-health, pro-justice, and pro-environment. And a 5th one, which is a bit like an outlier here, is pro-taste. Why pro-taste? Because all the products that come to the market and that have been introduced in recent years that are replacing animal-based products have this big challenge. Are they as good as conventional products? Are they as tasty as those products? Can they be a real replacement that people enjoy, that people want to buy again? So that's why we call this the 5th pro, the pro-taste. To address these 5 pros and the big mission of ProVeg, which is 50 by 40, the reduction of animal consumption by 50% by the year 2040, ProVeg has different action areas. We support and connect startups and global partners in advancing plant-based and cultured food innovation. We influence and support businesses, decision makers, governments, and different institutions in developing, providing, and promoting healthy, compassionate, and sustainable plant-based options. We work with governments and intergovernmental agencies, with universities, NGOs, researchers, science institutions, and so on. And we build strong collaborative networks by empowering and supporting other NGOs, other alliances, advocacy groups, and so on in communities. So overall, we want to provide inspiration and support to reduce and eliminate animal-based products from people's diets. And we do so by a lot of different interventions, impactful interventions. It's all about impact. So what can be scaled, what can be expanded, what can be adapted to different countries. This is what it's all about for us. We run public campaigns like the Diet Change, Not Climate Change campaign that informs consumers about how they can switch to a plant-based diet and how much they can reduce their own food-related emission that way. We are the initiators of flagship events like the New Food Conference, which is Europe's leading conference on trends and developments in the alternative protein space. And our startup incubator is the first one in the world to focus exclusively on impact-driven plant-based and cultured food startups. There are more such interventions like our policy work, like the V label, which is a certification for products that are vegan or vegetarian, which is very, very common in many, many countries. And now I would like to tell you a little bit more about the ProVeg incubator, which aims to identify and support founders from all over the world who are building the next generation of food companies. We were actually the first ones to do this exclusively. And since 2018, we've worked with over 70 startups, and those startups have raised over 230 million in funding. We help them with mentoring, which is super important. This can be people from the industries, and this can be scientists. This could be startup founders, successful startup founders, and so on. Our program, a 12-week program, runs for 3 months. It includes everything or covers everything from marketing to financial modeling, and then very, very important on fundraising and pitching. Our community is truly global. We have startups from India, from the US, from South America, from many, many European countries, even from Australia. So if a startup wants to join us, they become part of a cohort of each of a specific cohort that they are part of, but they also become part later on of an alumni community. And this can be actually a very long or lifelong relationship. So this is about ProVeg and the incubator. Let's talk about the ecosystem we are really in. We are currently seeing, as I said in the beginning, a transformation. This has to do with disruptive changes. They happen everywhere in the business world. Think of automobiles. In the 19th century, it was an inconceivable idea that most people would have a car to be mobile, to go somewhere. Now it's the main means of transportation across the globe. But this is, as we know, also a problem. Now, think of electric cars becoming more and more common now, and probably the future of driving cars. But no one could imagine this a few years back. Let's look a bit at the numbers and the drivers of this change. The plant-based food industry is projected to be actually 100 times larger by 2050. And the alternative meat sector is projected to achieve sales values of 28 billion in 2025 already. According to the report Food for Thought by Blue Horizon and the Boston Consulting Group, the market for alternative proteins will reach 290 billion USD by 2035. There's a huge white space now when you look at the different categories. Plant-based milk is now staple food. Plant-based meat is now very common. You have a huge choice of products. But the big white space now is in egg alternatives, cultured meat, and seafood alternatives. And this is just the beginning. Now, on the consumer side, who's driving this change and who's driving this development? It's the flexitarians. These are people that are reducing their consumption of conventional products, of animal-based products, that want to have a more sustainable choice when it comes to consuming and to eating and to buying in everyday life. And what's driving this, and this is really like the game changer, it's taste and price. As I said, the taste issue is super important. If products are not as good in terms of taste, then they cannot replace conventional products. But then the availability and the accessibility is also a huge factor, meaning that we need to reach price parity and get rid of those margins that you still see in the space when it comes to meat alternatives and fish alternatives and so on. Look at the industry and some examples here. Big players like Tesco, they have introduced huge sales goals. Or Unilever reckons with $1 billion from sales in the plant-based meat and dairy sector. And players like IKEA are replacing their restaurant food and introducing actually cheaper options now for their clients. Now, just recently, plant-based meat alternatives are for the first time cheaper than meat in the Netherlands. This was just published. So vegan burgers are on average 78 cents cheaper per kilogram as we are speaking, because of the current food security crisis and increasing prices in general. So this is really interesting to see that for the first time we have reached a tipping point where there is not only price parity, but where meat products are actually more expensive than their alternative counterparts. Think of players like Tyson, huge protein companies that are investing now in plant-based and cell-based meat companies. Think of companies like JBS, actually the biggest meat processing company in the world. They have introduced their own sub-brand for plant-based alternatives and say that people really just want to have good and tasty food. It doesn't matter that it's coming from an animal or from plants. In their case, for Ozo and for JBS, it comes from mycoprotein, that is from mushroom-based protein. Or think of Burger King, the fast food chain. They have said that their menus will be 50% plant-based by 2030. In Austria, Burger King recently introduced a new marketing campaign with the slogan, "Do you want normal or meat?" And in Vienna, the first fully plant-based Burger King branch just opened a few days ago. In 2021, $5 billion were invested in the alternative protein space. This was a surging 60% rise since 2020. And this is really like going on, and we will see much more money going into this space. And it needs to be like that because this is really like the beginning. If you want to go deeper into this, here is a bit of data on the plant-based dairy sector and projections here, and the same for plant-based meat. We had this number already. This is a projection, as I mentioned, from Blue Horizon and Boston Consulting. And overall, what's interesting to see is that we are seeing a development where the whole alternative market that is animal-free has moved from a niche and very specialized market focus to more new products like egg alternatives or the Beyond Meat patties or Impossible Foods in the US. And now we're seeing novel foods that are more experimentational, if you like, more innovative in the sense that they try to replace something, but also to introduce new aspects. So you don't just see a me too or a mimicking product. You will see new products that are not there yet, because in most cases you need to educate your consumers. So you're still at this stage where finding substitutes is the most pressing issue here. So a little bit of a wrap up here. What's happening on the client side, on the customer side? What's driving this this change? And it's lots of different things. What consumers really want. Sorry, here we go. So there's so many different needs and motivations for people to reduce consumption of animal products that these are things that food producers have to address. There's a complex interplay between these many drivers. And this is reflected nowadays in what companies offer as value propositions. You would see fillingness is a topic, kids like it has to be sustainable, it has to be convenient, price has to go down, ethical questions, animal welfare play a role, freshness, taste, of course, as I said, even expression of self-identity. Think of plant-based or animal-free things as a very huge lifestyle issue that's especially interesting for the younger generation, for the generation C and Y that are taking this very, very seriously and focusing on consumer patterns that are different from what the other generations have done. And then, so what is the industry offering in that sense? You're seeing new fat solutions, we're seeing hybrid products, vegan brands are becoming more important. Mycelium, which is mycoprotein based or mushroom based, is becoming more important. So it's not only about plant based, it's also about fungi. You have different ways of doing texturization. So the products become more interesting in terms of texture and the whole eating experience. I mentioned egg alternatives, new ingredients. Clean label is very important. You don't want to have these long ingredients lists. You want to have maybe a product that has only 5 ingredients. And so you will see a lot of these things in parallel. And these will be the solutions, and they will lead to certainly version 2.0 or 3.0 of pretty much any kind of product that you can imagine. And this is why we think that this transformation is ongoing. It will be a long process. And at the moment, given the current macroeconomic circumstances and the crisis in the world, it may be slowing down a little bit. But given all these trends and drivers and money that is going into the space, we think that this is actually a very, very big transformation. That's all from my side. I'd be happy to chat with you, or you can get in touch, write me an email, contact me on LinkedIn, or come by the ProVeg Incubator when you're in Berlin. Thank you so much.